Hello, TM24 here, and we are back with some more Marvel Snap content. Now today, I've got a Wong discard deck for y'all. I've had a ton of fun playing it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some gameplay, walk you through my thought process, then we're going to break down the deck, some lines of play that you can take, and finally, in case you don't have some of these cards, I've got you. I'll talk about some potential replacements and just some overall info on this deck. But first, let's take a look at some of that gameplay. Alright, so we're going to get right into game 1 of 3 here, and as you can see, we've got Colleen Wing, Swarm, Dracula, and Gambit in our hand. Yes, this deck uses Gambit, uses Wong, uses Collector, and we can make some pretty cool plays because of some of these different cards. Now, we totally could have played Colleen Wing early. Get us those zero-cost swarms, not a bad idea, but I didn't want my hand filling up too much at the start of the game. Additionally, we hit Wong, and because Sinister London is out there, board space may become a little bit of an issue towards the end of this game. So, for now, we're gonna pass. You know, we don't have a ton of, we don't have any one-drops, so our early game typically looks like if you can get Morbius down, get Morbius down. If you can get Collector down, get Collector down. Colleen Wing is a hit or miss, depending on what you have in your hand and how the game is going to play out. So we go into turn 3 here, we pick up Collector, and that's a perfect pickup. We want to get the Collector down because we want to start sending those swarms to our hand, and by doing that, we're going to buff up the Collector. So Collector is going to come out. They're obviously playing some sort of a Phoenix Force deck. They ate up 2 of those torches with the Carnage, and they're good to go. Now, we pick up another solid card in Wolverine here because that's going to be great for our as a target for Colleen Wing, for Gambit, things like that. Spider-Man is a little bit scary, but we know that we can do some damage here with Gambit, and if he hits on both of those Wong location, their board is going to be looking pretty empty. We did pick up M.O.D.O.K, which would be a great play as well, really powering up those collectors, but if you can keep your opponent from having a whole bunch of cards out there, that's typically the route I want to go. So we're going Gambit, and we've got Colleen Wing ready to go. We didn't want to fill up Sinister London in case we wanted to play, Chavez there next turn, since that's going to be our draw. Phoenix Force comes out, just like we thought. Human Torch attached, but now it's our turn, and Gambit is about to start firing, and here he goes. First shot coming through, and it took out that Human Torch. It's like it was laser locked onto it. The other one goes down. Maybe we're getting a bit lucky here, but hey, Gambit's about to hit a bunch of things, and we just happen to hit a few of those great targets. Now, as you can see, we can continue to discard here. Those swarms are coming back to our hand, powering up our Collector. This is what we're looking to do with this deck. We've got super strong cards, cards that can be powered up greatly thanks to things like Colleen Wing and Gambit. We pulled that off perfectly. We get Chavez down in the middle, and our opponent is running, and we take a nice, easy win. Now we're into game 2 here, 2 of 3. So we've got one more after this, and if you look at our hand, we have the perfect standard discard hand. 2, Morbius can come down. Ideally, we pick up Lady Sif so we can get the discard onto Apocalypse early, but hey, we are in a really nice spot so far. We even pick up Colleen Wing for the discard onto Wolverine next turn if we want to go that route. So Morbius comes out, and it's another move deck of some sort, multiple man coming down. Death's Domain is tough for us. We're going to be really hard-pressed to get power into that location unless it's Wolverine. Yes, we could have just put Wolverine in there, but there's no guarantee that he would have popped back up on that location anyway. So let's get the discard, power up Morbius instead. And then turn 4, 5, and 6 are looking pretty standard here. We have Dracula ready to go. We have M.O.D.O.K ready to discard our hand. We have Apocalypse, and we hit the perfect pickup there as well in Swarm. We can get some more power down. Our Dracula is going to be nice and strong. and we're just ready to go. Venom comes out, eats up that Multiman. Pretty much worst case scenario here. Phoenix Force comes down. It's going to be really tough for us to beat that. But we picked up a great card here in the form of Gambit. We thought about it for a second, but we decided to go with the standard discard line of play. So we're getting rid of everything. We've got Apocalypse ready to go. Couple copies of Swarm, and we know that we are drawing, that we're going to draw Chavez next turn. Multiple Man comes back, and that is super powered up. Really, really scary. It made me question if maybe I should have went with Gambit to delete the Venom, but even then, I wasn't sure. Here, we decided to get those swarms down. We want to make sure Dracula is nice and healthy. Chavez is going to go to that middle lane. So we've won the middle. They're going to win Death's Domain, and it's all about if we've got enough power in Lemuria, thanks to Dracula. Zola comes out, sends Multiple Man to Nidavellir and Death's Domain. Now all of a sudden we needed our power in Nidavellir, and we had plenty. Chavez was down, Morbius is nice and strong, and we get another big victory right there. Finally, we are in game 3. We've got Collector and Morbius ready for 2. So really, we've got options now. Do we want to go with the discard route? Do we want to go with the Collector route? We think about Morbius at first, but seeing as we've got Swarm in our hand as well, we decided to go with the Collector into the miniaturized lab. Now that doesn't mean we're not still going to go with the standard discard line. We could still play Morbius on 3, but right now we've got options. So we get Collector down, and turn 3 comes around, we draw Dracula. All of a sudden, we're thinking maybe we just go with the standard line of play. Let's get Morbius down. We can always play M.O.D.O.K on 5. We're just hoping to draw Apocalypse at this point in case we do want to go with that, with that Dracula line of play. So they're playing discard as well. We pick up Colleen Wing, so it's time to go with Wong. We don't see Apocalypse, so Wong makes more sense, and they end up doing the same thing. We're going up against another discard Wong deck. We pick up Wolverine, but we're just going to go crazy here. We want to buff up the Collector, buff up Morbius. M.O.D.O.K is going to come through twice. We're going to get a handful of swarms, and then we know that we're drawing Chavez on 6, so we can play Chavez plus all the swarms in our hand, and that should be enough power depending on what they decide to do. Now, I am a little bit worried about something like a Gambit coming through, and maybe I'm just thinking that because that's what I'm playing, but obviously that would be pretty rough for us if it did come out. Still, M.O.D.O.K on top of Wong is a great play, powering up the Collector, powering up Morbius, and we're just going to have a really nice board going into turn 6. So we're just waiting on our opponent here to make a move. But like I said, we like where we're at. We're going to have, I think we're going to have, 4 copies of Swarm once this ends? Actually, I think it's going to be even more than that. So we'll see here. But they played Mystique, and I definitely thought Gambit was going to come through here. But then Colleen Wing comes out, and they are going to get a whole bunch of swarms. So this is just going to be a swarm battle to see who's going to end up winning it. Now, I think we've got a huge advantage because we have both Morbius and the Collector out there. So M.O.D.O.K comes through, discards everything, right? We've got the copies of Swarm. We've got Wolverine down on the board as well, and we are looking good. 4 copies of Swarm. We pick up Chavez. We're ahead by a lot. It's just time to put some power down and see if we can win this game. So we're putting the swarms down, and it's just we're trying to figure out where we need the most power. We can, of course, move to New York. We don't need to put a whole bunch of power there simply because they only have 6. We already have 4 from Wolverine, so moving just M.O.D.O.K makes sense. That gets us up to 12, 13, 14, 15 with Swarm. So that's what we end up doing. We're way ahead in Fist Tower, but all the swarms are coming down. This is probably the most swarms I've seen in one game ever. It might be a record, I don't know, but it is pretty wild. They end up going with an Absorbing Man, little bit interesting. So I definitely thought that they must have had a Morbius or something that they played if they're going to be discarding this Apocalypse so many times. but I was trying to figure out how much power. I was like, okay, a Morbius could definitely come down. Now, it wouldn't have really mattered because we do have enough power in New York, but look at all those swarms come through. 4 on their side, 4 on mine, but we end up taking all 3 lanes. Let's go. All right, so you've seen some gameplay. Now let's talk about this deck a little bit. Obviously, we have a couple of unusual pieces in here, primarily in the form of the Collector and Wong, right? Additionally, Gambit recently got nerfed, and we wanted to see if we could make him work. Gambit is a super fun card. Wasn't seeing a whole lot of play outside of the Gambit combo, which I am very fond of. I am trying to still make that work, so be on the lookout for that. But we wanted to get Gambit in and see if he could find some playability. And he fits perfectly with the discard package here. And we've got a couple different ways that I see this deck actually playing out. And I'm going to pop this up here for you right now, but there's 2 lines of play. There's your standard discard line, which is going to look like Morbius going into Lady Sif on 3, on 4, Dracula on 5, M.O.D.O.K on 6, either Apocalypse or Chavez, and your swarms, and ideally your Wolverine got down during that as well. Now with this list, because we have the Collector and Wong, we can take advantage of that as well. We can go Collector on 2. 3, Lady Sif is still great because Apocalypse popping back to your hand does power up the Collector. On 4 then, we can go with Wong, meaning our turn 5 can look like Colleen Wing and Gambit. Ideally, we're hitting that swarm, we're hitting Wolverine, we're discarding those a bunch of times, and that's powering up our Collector. Ideally, we're destroying some cards with Gambit as well. Maybe you don't hit Gambit, maybe you didn't hit Sif on 3, so you could always substitute Lady Sif with Colleen Wing on 5. 6 is then looking like whatever swarms you discarded, potentially with a 6-drop, and hopefully you get a nice, easy win. Now, there are definitely some other cards that I've experimented with in this deck, and we're going to talk about those right now. So, pretty much any of the discard cards are going to be a pretty good option as well. So I've got Hellcow, Moon Knight, and Blade up there, but you could also use Swordmaster. Not a bad, not a bad inclusion there. And Swordmaster might actually be a better inclusion than Hellcow. With Hellcow, obviously, you get more discards. So if you're hitting those swarms, that Apocalypse, great. That's going to power up your Collector and your Morbius. But Hellcow is a little bit more expensive. And if we're going with Wong on 4, on 5, we want to kind of combo a couple of these discard cards on top of Wong, which is why we were looking for Colleen Wing and Gambit. So additionally, you could look to potentially put in something like Blade, really cheap, fit that right on top of Wong, and you're feeling pretty good. You could go Moon Knight, start to discard some of their cards as well. Not a bad inclusion there. Now, we do have a couple of other options, and one of them was Mystique. We've got 2 great targets for Mystique, one in the form of Morbius, and the other in the form of Wong. Yes, getting Mystique down on Wong on 5, going into 6, if you've got Gambit in hand, congrats, you win the game. Your 6 could then look like Gambit, Lady Sif, ideally, Collector's getting powered up, Morbius is down, and, Wolverine, and you've already played a couple swarms as well. Well, save 1 in case you want to continually buff up that Collector. So Mystique is a great option as well. Then we've got Invisible Woman. Maybe you want to hide some discard cards behind that. That'll get you those extra procs on the Collector, Morbius when the game ends. And finally, we've got Storm. I think Storm is a great control piece, and we have a pretty good follow-up in the form of Dracula. So I don't hate the idea of going, Morbius on 2, Storm on 3, and then Dracula on 4. Maybe that's overkill if you play that all in one lane. Morbius potentially could win you a lane by himself. If you storm that lane, same thing can be said with Dracula. So I really think Storm is a good inclusion as well, but I'm trying to get as many discard pieces in as I could. So this deck has been super fun. We get to make use out of Gambit. We get Collector into a discard deck, and we get to use Wong, who I still think is one of the strongest cards in Marvel Snap. So I'd love for you guys to give this a shot. Let me know how it goes for you and if there's any other cards that you guys would include as well. Now, if you've hung around till now, watched the whole thing, I really do appreciate you. It means a lot to me. And if you haven't subscribed or liked already, now would be a good time to do so. I'm going to continue to put out Marvel Snap content, so be on the lookout for that. And until then, have some fun.